Before the Revolutionary War, African Americans were about one-fifth of the population in all the colonies. Slavery was still in existence, and it was separated into two different types: tobacco and rice production. Black and white Southerners interacted, but the white elites made it bluntly obvious to separate the two cultures. Lastly, as the tension between the colonists and the motherland began to increase, so did the harshness on the slaves. Slave codes were either created or enforced strongly or added to. African Americans started out to try and help the colonists with the war effort, but as time went on, they became increasingly excluded. Resolutions were written stating only free black men could enlist, but the colonists weren't very willing to take slaves as soldiers. Makes you wonder how they won the war. The British, on the other hand, were more lenient and accepting of any help. They promised slaves their freedom once they won. They also thought that the thought of so many rebellious blacks would scare the colonists back into their original ways. Crispus Attucks was born in 1723. He was raised as a slave on Colonel Buckminster's farm. He was sold to another slave owner at 16 years old. He escaped slavery when he was about 27 years old and was one of five to die in the Boston. James Somerset was a slave that sued for his freedom in 1772. He was taken over to England by his master and tried to escape, but was caught and was going to be sent to Jamaica. He was eventually given his freedom, which helped lead to the abolishment of slavery in Great Britain, but not British colonies. It did, however, give hope to some American slaves who were starting to petition for their freedom. James Fordon was born a free black man and used that to his advantage. He had a very profitable business and worked towards equality for all. He was very wealthy and gave a lot of his money, time, and energy into working towards civil rights and abolishing slavery. Elizabeth Freeman, better known as Mum Bet, was an important African American woman during the Revolutionary times in America. She ran away from her plantation because her mistress struck her with a hot fireplace shovel. Her master filed a case and demanded his property be returned. Mum Bet, in return, sued her old master. She won her case because Massachusetts never established slavery laws. She later became a highly sought-after nurse and midwife. Salem Poor was a hero of the battle at Bunker Hill. He and a couple other soldiers were sent during the night to build forts and other fortifications. After these events, he bought his freedom in 1769. Phillis Wheatley was the first woman and first slave to publish a book of poetry. She learned from her master and his family. In the end, her master ended up freeing her in 1773. Unfortunately, she had wrote another book but died before it was published. Colonel Ty, formerly a slave named Titus, fought for the British in the Royal Ethiopian Regiment. He led a number of soldiers on raids and assassination runs. He was very much feared by the New Jersey Patriots. He was never formally acknowledged by the British, but his story ran rampant among the colony. James Armistead Lafayette was a slave owned by William Armistead, and he volunteered to be a spy for the Continental Army. He became a double agent and relayed the important information to the colonists and unimportant information to the British. He remained enslaved until 1786, in which he fought for his freedom by describing his good deeds. The Royal Ethiopian Regiment were a group of about 800 African American men who agreed with and accepted the Lord Dunmore's proclamation. They would carry around muskets and wear shirts that said, "Liberty to slaves." They served mostly as guards and laborers. Henri Christophe was a 12-year-old slave boy who was wounded in an altercation before the Battle of Savannah in Georgia. Later on in his life, he became the liberator of Haiti, which led to him becoming the King of Haiti. After the war had been won, African Americans in the newly formed United States hoped for freedom to come to them also. Sadly, it wouldn't come in full until about a century later, depending upon who's telling the story. Many black slaves tried to flee through Great Britain's last port in New York to get away from enslavement. After the Treaty of Paris was agreed to, American colonists demanded that the British return their property to them. Luckily, for about 3,000 to 4,000 black loyalists, they were able to make homes elsewhere because the British refused to give them back to their master.